The snobby moms who called me a teenage screw-up had no idea I was about to save one of their kids. The snobby moms who called me a teenage screw-up suddenly needed me to save their kids. I brought my 3-year-old Lily to the playground early Saturday morning, since I knew fewer kids meant less staring at how she couldn't jump or speak in full sentences yet. I also knew I looked even younger than 19 in my thrift store clothes, but every dollar went to Lily's therapies and specialists. When a group of perfectly styled moms arrived with their designer diaper bags, I could feel their eyes on us immediately. They thought I was just a teenage screw-up, having no idea I'd raised Lily's with no help for 3 years and already kept her alive longer than her doctors had expected. The first mom, wearing workout clothes that cost more than my rent, walked over and said loudly to her friend, "This is why children shouldn't have children. Look at that poor little girl. She can barely hold on properly, probably brain damage from her mom partying while pregnant." When Lily smiled and waved at her, only managing to say, "Hella," the woman ignored her completely. 3 years old and can't even form sentences. It's heartbreaking what teenage pregnancy does to innocent kids. I helped Lily down from the swing, supporting her because her muscle tone made her unsteady on her feet. A second mom pulled her son away when he tried to play with Lily. "We don't play with her, sweetie. She's slow." Her mommy was probably on substances when pregnant. And now look. She stage whispered to the other moms, "You can always tell. The babies come out wrong. Look how she walks like she's drunk." When Lily tried to join their kids in the sandbox, moving carefully because of her poor coordination, but the first mom physically blocked her. "I'm sorry, but your daughter is too delayed to play safely with normal children. She might hurt someone." Lily reached for a bucket and the woman snatched it away. "These are for kids who can actually use them properly. Your daughter doesn't even know how to play right. Maybe you should keep her at home." The third mom, bouncing a designer baby on her hip, confronted me directly. "How old are you, 12? Let me guess. You got knocked up in middle school and kept it because you thought babies were cute?" She looked at Lily struggling with climbing stairs and shook her head. "Now this broken child has to suffer because of you. She'll never read, never write, never have a real life because you were selfish." I swallowed back tears and leaned over to help Lily with her shoe, and they surrounded me. "She can't even dress herself at 3? That's what happens when you drink and smoke while pregnant." Another added, "She's probably on welfare, using our tax money to pay for the damage she caused. That child should be taken away." Lily fell trying to run after the other kids, and when I rushed to help her, the first mom grabbed my arm. "You've already ruined her enough. Maybe if you let her struggle, she'll develop something since you didn't give her a working brain." When Lily started crying, the woman said, "See? Emotionally stunted too. A normal 3-year-old wouldn't cry from a little fall. She's like a permanent baby." One mom started recording on her phone. "I'm documenting this neglect for CPS. Look how young she is, how the child can't speak or move properly. Clear signs of prenatal substance abuse." She narrated to her phone about my obvious incompetence, and how I was probably high right now. When Lily reached for me struggling to say "Mama," the woman said, "Listen to that. 3 years old and talking like she's 1. Criminal." The third mom actually called 911. "There's an unfit teenage mother here with a child who's clearly been damaged by prenatal exposure. The girl can't walk or talk normally, obvious developmental delays from substances." While on the phone, she told her friends, "That baby would be better off in foster care. At least she'd have a chance at life instead of being raised by trash who destroyed her before she was even born." They made their kids line up to stare at Lily. Look at her inability to be normal. Her mother poisoned her and now she'll never have friends. Lily was crying harder now, understanding their tone. And when I tried to pick her up, 2 moms blocked me. "Let everyone see what you did to her." The first mom bent down to Lily's face before I could snatch her away. "Your mommy hurt you before you were born, sweetie. You'll never be smart like other kids." I was about to either snap or burst into tears, but that's when I noticed one of their boys sitting in the sandbox, his lips turning blue, his breathing becoming shallow and rapid. His mother was just standing there screaming, "What's wrong with him? He was fine a second ago." As he struggled for air, his eyes rolling back. Everyone panicked, the boy's mother shaking him and making it worse. Someone screaming about calling 911 again, but no one actually helping. I dropped to my knees next to the boy and pushed his mother's hands away from his shoulders where she was shaking him hard enough to make his head bounce. His lips were getting darker blue, and his breathing was coming in these short, scary gasps that barely moved his chest. I'd seen this before during Lily's allergy training sessions at the hospital, when they showed us videos of kids having reactions. The way his face was swelling around his mouth and eyes, the wheezing sound coming from his throat and those hives spreading up his neck all screamed anaphylactic shock. I pressed 2 fingers against his neck to find his pulse racing way too fast, while his chest barely moved with each breath. His mother kept screaming right in my ear about what was wrong with him, but I blocked her out and focused on checking his airway wasn't blocked by his tongue or vomit. I turned his head to the side and saw his throat was clear, but the swelling was getting worse by the second. My hands moved on their own from all those emergency training sessions, positioning him flat on his back with his legs slightly raised using someone's diaper bag. I grabbed his mother's wrist hard enough to get her attention and told her to stop shaking him right now because she was making it worse. The recording mom was still holding her phone, but her face had gone white, and I yelled at her to call 911 and tell them we had a child in anaphylaxis who needed an ambulance immediately. She actually lowered her phone and started dialing with shaking fingers while I kept the boy positioned on his back and monitored his breathing getting shallower. His mother was sobbing so hard she could barely stand, but I needed information fast, so I asked if he had known allergies or carried an EpiPen. She just stared at me with tears streaming down her face, not processing my words until I repeated the question louder, and she suddenly started digging through her designer diaper bag like her life depended on it. Makeup and wipes and snacks went flying everywhere as she dumped the whole thing on the ground, finally pulling out a yellow and orange EpiPen Jr. from an inside pocket. I grabbed it from her shaking hands and quickly checked the expiration date on the side, relieved to see it was still good for 3 more months. I uncapped it while explaining out loud what I was doing, partly to keep myself focused and partly so his mother wouldn't panic more. The orange tip went against his outer thigh, right through his shorts, and I pressed hard until I heard the click, then counted to 10 slowly, while holding it in place. The needle stayed in his leg the whole time, and I watched his face for any change while keeping pressure steady. After 10 seconds, I pulled it out and massaged the injection site for a few seconds like they'd taught us. His breathing started to ease just slightly after about 30 seconds. Not normal, but better than those horrible gasps from before. The blue color around his lips faded to more of a gray, and his chest started moving more with each breath. I kept him lying flat on his back and told one of the other moms to go stand by the parking lot to flag down the ambulance when it arrived. His mother dropped to her knees beside me, sobbing and asking over and over if he was going to be okay. I told her the EpiPen was working, but he absolutely needed to get to the hospital right away because reactions can come back. My voice stayed calm even though my hands were shaking as I kept 2 fingers on his pulse and watched his chest rise and fall. Lily had crawled over and was sitting quietly next to me, patting my leg with her little hand like she knew something serious was happening. The same women who'd been calling me an unfit mother 5 minutes ago were standing in a circle around us, completely silent now. Nobody said anything, but the whole feeling in the air had shifted as I relayed information to the 911 dispatcher through the recording mom's phone. I told them the boy was approximately 4 years old, had received 1 dose of epinephrine 2 minutes ago, was conscious but not fully responsive, and his breathing had improved from severe to moderate distress. The dispatcher stayed on the line and I kept reporting his vital signs every 30 seconds while we waited. The ambulance pulled up exactly 8 minutes after the call, though it felt like hours, and EMT Derek Brennan jumped out with his partner already pulling equipment. Derek dropped down next to me and immediately took over, his hands moving fast but smooth as he checked the boy's airway and breathing. He confirmed I did everything right while getting oxygen on the boy's face and asked me to describe exactly what happened from the beginning. I explained the timeline while Derek got an IV started in the boy's arm, saying I'd noticed the blue lips and recognized anaphylactic shock from my daughter's medical training. His partner was already preparing medications while Derek worked, and the boy's mother finally managed to tell them his name was Aiden, and he was allergic to tree nuts. She said he must have touched something at the playground, but she didn't see him eat anything. Derek looked up at me while adjusting the oxygen flow and asked if I was medical personnel or a nurse. I explained that my daughter Lily had multiple medical conditions that required me to take emergency response training, including recognizing and treating allergic reactions. He nodded and turned to Aiden's mother, telling her clearly that my quick response with the EpiPen had probably saved her son's life, because anaphylaxis can close the airway completely in minutes. Delaney's face went white as Derek's words sank in, and she turned to look at me with tears running down her face. Her mouth opened and closed like she was trying to say something, but the words wouldn't come out. She reached toward me, then pulled her hand back, then reached again before dropping it to her side. The same woman who'd called me trash 20 minutes ago was trying to thank me for saving her kid, and couldn't get the words past her throat. Derek's partner was already moving Aiden onto the stretcher while Derek kept the oxygen mask on his face and adjusted the IV drip. Aiden's eyes were open now and tracking movement, though he still looked pretty out of it. Derek glanced at the third mom, who was still holding her phone from the 911 call, and asked if she was the one who called about an unfit mother earlier. She nodded slowly, and Derek made a note on his tablet, saying he'd be adding to his report that the teenage mother in question had provided emergency medical care that likely prevented a fatal outcome. The third mom's face went red, and she looked down at her phone like she wanted to disappear into it. They lifted the stretcher and started rolling it toward the ambulance, with Delaney hurrying alongside, one hand on Aiden's arm. She looked back at me once more and mouthed something that might have been, "Thank you," before climbing into the back with her son. Derek closed the doors and the ambulance pulled away with its lights still flashing, but no siren this time since Aiden was stable. My legs started shaking as soon as the ambulance turned the corner, and I had to sit down right there on the playground bench. The adrenaline that had kept me focused during the emergency was draining out and leaving me feeling like jelly. Lily crawled into my lap and patted my arm with her little hand, looking up at me with worried eyes. She managed to get out, "Mama, okay?" in her halting way, and I hugged her tight, nodding into her hair. The playground had gone completely quiet, except for some nervous whispers between the remaining moms who were gathering their kids and trying to act like they hadn't just spent 20 minutes calling me an unfit mother. The recording mom was looking at her phone, and I watched her swipe through and delete the video she'd been taking of me and Lily. She thought I didn't notice, but I'd already seen the purple bruise forming on my upper arm where the first mom had grabbed me earlier. I shifted Lily to my other arm and pulled out my phone to take a quick photo of the bruise, making sure to get the whole thing in frame with good lighting. The timestamp would show it happened today, and I had a feeling I might need evidence of what really went down here. I stood up with Lily on my hip and started gathering our stuff from where I'd dropped it when Aiden collapsed. My hands were still shaking a little as I picked up Lily's sippy cup and the little bag of goldfish crackers we'd brought for snack. The other moms were trying to catch my eye now, some of them opening their mouths like they wanted to say something, but I kept my focus on getting our things together. The third mom, who'd called 911 about me, walked over and touched my shoulder lightly. She started saying something about how she was just concerned about Lily's welfare and didn't mean anything by it. I shrugged away from her touch and kept packing our bag without responding. She kept talking, saying she was a mandated reporter at her job and felt obligated to call when she saw what looked like neglect. I hoisted the bag onto my shoulder and picked Lily up, walking past her toward the playground exit without acknowledging her attempts to justify herself. Two other moms tried to stop me on the way out, one saying she hoped there were no hard feelings, and another asking if I needed anything. I kept walking, focusing on Lily's weight in my arms and the rhythm of my steps on the sidewalk. The 15-minute walk home felt like forever, with my body still coming down from the adrenaline high, and Lily getting heavier with each block. She fell asleep against my shoulder about halfway there, her breath warm against my neck. Once we got to our small apartment, I laid Lily down for her nap in her toddler bed and sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. My hands had finally stopped shaking enough to type as I opened a new document and started writing down everything that had happened at the playground. I put in timestamps starting from when we arrived at 8:30 a.m., when the group of moms showed up around 9:15, and documented each cruel thing they'd said about me and Lily. I described how they'd physically blocked Lily from playing, how one grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise, how they called 911 to report me as an unfit mother. Then I wrote about Aiden's allergic reaction starting at approximately 9:45 a.m. and exactly what steps I took to help him. I uploaded the photo of my bruised arm and saved everything to both my hard drive and the cloud, knowing I'd probably need this documentation when CPS showed up. After Lily woke up from her nap, we spent the rest of the afternoon doing her physical therapy exercises and working on her speech sounds. Around 7 that evening, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was Delaney saying Aiden was stable and would be released tomorrow morning, thanking me again for acting so quickly. She mentioned the doctor said he must have touched something with tree nut residue at the playground, maybe on the swings or sandbox toys. I stared at her message for a few minutes before typing back a short response saying I was glad he was okay and that I hoped he felt better soon. I didn't mention how she'd called Lily broken or blocked her from the sandbox or said she'd never have a real life. I just kept it simple and professional, then put my phone away and focused on getting Lily ready for bed. 2 days passed with me jumping every time my phone rang, waiting for the inevitable CPS call. It came Tuesday morning while I was feeding Lily breakfast. The woman identified herself as Zara Qualls from Child Protective Services and said they'd received a report of concern about my daughter's welfare. My stomach dropped even though I'd been expecting this call. She asked if we could schedule a home visit to discuss the situation, and I agreed to Wednesday afternoon at 2 o'clock, keeping my voice steady even though my heart was racing. After hanging up, I spent the rest of Tuesday and Wednesday morning gathering every piece of paper that showed what kind of mother I really was. I pulled out all of Lily's medical records showing her diagnosis and prognosis, the notes from every therapy appointment, receipts for her medications, and special equipment. I organized them chronologically in a binder with tabs for easy reference. Then I called Lily's pediatrician's office and let them know CPS might be contacting them about Lily's care. The receptionist put me through to the doctor, who said she'd be happy to speak with them about Lily's excellent care and my dedication to her treatment plan. I made the same call to Lily's physical therapist and speech therapist, both of whom said they'd provide glowing reports about my involvement in Lily's care. By Wednesday afternoon, I had everything ready and tried to calm my nerves while Lily played with her blocks on the living room floor. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, and my hand shook a little as I picked it up. The message was from Delaney asking if we could meet for coffee tomorrow to talk about what happened. I stared at the screen for a full minute before typing back that I could meet her Tuesday morning at the small cafe on 3rd Street. Part of me wanted to tell her to leave us alone, but if she was willing to tell CPS the truth about the playground, it might help. Monday dragged by with me checking my phone constantly and organizing Lily's medical files for the 3rd time. Tuesday morning, I dropped Lily off with Mrs. Jones next door, who'd watched her a few times before when I had appointments. The cafe was mostly empty when I arrived, and I picked a corner table where I could see the door. Delaney walked in 5 minutes late wearing designer jeans and a sweater that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. She sat down across from me and immediately started thanking me again for saving Aiden. "I was horrible to you and Lily," she said while stirring sugar into her coffee. I just nodded and sipped my water since I couldn't afford their overpriced drinks. She went on about having a bad morning and her husband traveling and how stressed she'd been, but I just kept nodding without saying it was okay because it wasn't. She told me she'd already talked to the other moms and told them they were wrong about me. I made sure they knew you saved Aiden's life, she said. Then she mentioned their mom's group Facebook page had been buzzing about the incident, with some defending me now, while others were still saying I seemed too young to be a good mother. She showed me her phone where she'd posted about how I'd saved her son, but I could see the comments underneath where some women were still calling for CPS to investigate. I thanked her for trying to help and said I had to get back to Lily. She grabbed my hand as I stood up and I saw tears in her eyes, but I gently pulled away and left. Wednesday came too fast, and at exactly 2 o'clock the doorbell rang. Zara Qualls stood at my door holding a clipboard and wearing a navy blazer with her ID badge visible. She was younger than I expected, maybe early 30s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. I invited her in, and she immediately started observing everything from the child locks on the cabinets to the therapy schedule posted on the fridge. Lily looked up from her coloring and waved at the new person. Zara smiled and waved back, then asked if she could look around the apartment. I showed her Lily's room with her special bed rails and the bathroom with the grab bars I'd installed myself. She checked the kitchen, noting the full fridge and the cabinet with Lily's medications all properly labeled. Back in the living room, she sat on the couch and watched me help Lily with her afternoon snack. She asked how old I was when I had Lily, and I told her 16, watching her write it down without any change in expression. "What about Lily's father?" she asked. I explained he'd left when I told him I was pregnant and signed away his rights before she was born. She asked about my family, and I had to swallow hard before telling her they'd kicked me out when I refused to give Lily up for adoption. She wanted to know how I supported us, and I showed her my work schedule at the grocery store and how I'd arranged my shifts around Lily's therapy appointments. Then she pulled out the medical records I'd organized and started going through them carefully. She seemed genuinely impressed by the consistency of Lily's appointments and asked specific questions about her diagnoses. I showed her the receipts I'd kept for every therapy copay, every piece of special equipment, every adaptive toy I'd bought. She studied the papers showing how I'd fought with insurance to get Lily's therapies covered and won. I pulled out my phone and showed her the photos of the bruise on my arm from where that mom had grabbed me. I explained everything that happened at the playground while she took detailed notes. She asked for the names of the women involved, and I gave her Delaney's information plus descriptions of the others. "I'll be interviewing witnesses," she said while writing. She spent the next 20 minutes just watching Lily and me together. Lily brought over her favorite stuffed elephant to show the visitor and managed to say, "Nice lady," which made Zara smile. She observed how I redirected Lily when she got frustrated with a puzzle and praised her attempts even when she couldn't complete it. She watched me do Lily's physical therapy exercises with her and saw how Lily giggled when I made silly sounds to keep her engaged. Before leaving, Zara explained the investigation would take several weeks to complete. She said she'd be contacting Lily's doctors and therapists for their input about her care. "Based on what I'm seeing today, I don't have any immediate safety concerns," she said at the door. After she left, I sat on the floor next to Lily and helped her stack blocks while my hands finally stopped shaking. That night, after Lily went to bed, I couldn't sleep at all and kept checking my phone every few minutes. Around midnight, I opened Facebook and searched for the local moms group page that someone had mentioned at the playground months ago. The group was called Westside Moms United and had over 300 members with posts about playdates and school recommendations. I scrolled through recent posts until I saw Delaney's name with a long post from earlier that evening. She'd written about what happened at the playground and how I'd saved Aiden's life when he went into anaphylactic shock. The post had 47 comments already, and I started reading them with my stomach in knots. The first mom from the playground had commented that she was just concerned about child welfare, and anyone would have questioned such a young mother. Another woman who wasn't even there wrote about how she'd seen teenage moms at the mall letting their kids run wild, and it was good that people were watching out for neglected children. Someone else defended the group, saying they were protecting innocent kids from potential harm. A few mothers I didn't recognize shared their own stories about teenage parents they'd judged at grocery stores and doctors' offices. One comment said that calling CPS was the responsible thing to do when a child showed clear developmental delays. My hands were shaking as I read comment after comment defending what they'd done to us. The next morning, my phone rang while I was making Lily breakfast, and the caller ID showed it was her speech therapist. She told me Zara had contacted her office yesterday, asking about Lily's progress and my involvement in her therapy. The therapist said she'd given Zara a detailed report about how I never missed appointments and always practiced the exercises at home with Lily. She mentioned she'd told Zara that in her 15 years of practice, she'd rarely seen such a dedicated parent, especially one so young. She added that she'd emphasized how Lily's progress exceeded expectations given her initial prognosis. After I hung up, I felt slightly better, but still couldn't shake the worry about what those other mothers might say to CPS. Over the next week, I completely avoided our usual playground and started taking Lily to a park on the other side of town instead. It meant catching 2 buses instead of walking 5 minutes, but I couldn't face seeing those women again. The new park was smaller and usually empty in the mornings, which suited us fine. Lily didn't seem to notice the change and happily played on the different equipment while I sat on a bench watching her and jumping at every phone notification. 5 days after the incident, Delaney sent me a text saying Aiden was completely recovered and back to his normal activities. She wrote that he kept asking about the nice lady who helped him breathe better and wanted to thank me properly. I texted back briefly just saying I was glad he was okay and left it at that. 2 days later, I got an official-looking envelope in the mail with the hospital's logo on it. Inside was a form letter thanking me for providing emergency medical assistance to a patient in their care. It was clearly a standard template they sent to anyone who helped before the ambulance arrived, but I still read it 3 times and put it in my folder with Lily's medical papers. That same afternoon, the receptionist from Lily's pediatrician's office called to let me know they'd spoken with the CPS investigator. She said the doctor had provided extensive documentation about Lily's care and progress over the past 3 years. Then she lowered her voice and added that Dr. Miller was personally appalled that anyone would question my parenting given everything I'd done for Lily. She said the doctor had made it very clear to the investigator that I was an exceptional mother who'd fought harder for her child than most parents ever would. Exactly 2 weeks after Zara's home visit, she called while Lily was napping. She explained she'd completed interviews with multiple witnesses from the playground incident, as well as all of Lily's healthcare providers. She couldn't share specific details about the investigation, but said everything was looking very positive for case closure. She mentioned she'd be writing up her final report over the next few days and would let me know the official outcome soon. 3 weeks after the playground incident, I finally worked up the courage to go back to our original playground. I got there at 6 in the morning when I knew it would be empty, and Lily immediately ran to her favorite swing. She'd completely forgotten about what happened there, and was just happy to be back at the familiar playground. I pushed her on the swing while she laughed and kicked her legs trying to go higher. About 20 minutes later, I heard footsteps on the gravel path, and looked up to see Delaney walking toward us with Aiden. My whole body tensed, but she just gave a small wave, and I found myself waving back. Aiden broke away from his mom and ran straight toward me before I could react. He wrapped his arms around my legs in a hug that caught me completely off guard, and I had to blink hard to keep my eyes from watering. He looked up at me and said, "Thank you for helping him when he couldn't breathe," and then ran off to play near Lily. Delaney stood a few feet away looking uncomfortable, but managed to say she was grateful for what I'd done. She mentioned that the first mom who grabbed my arm had been telling people around the neighborhood that I'd overreacted about everything at the playground. I just shrugged because I had way bigger things to worry about than what she thought of me. The next week, Zara showed up for what she called her final home visit, right when Lily's therapist was already there for our regular session. The therapist let Zara watch while she worked with Lily on her balance exercises, and showed her the progress charts from the past 3 years. She pointed out how Lily could now stand on 1 foot for 3 seconds when 6 months ago she couldn't even lift 1 foot off the ground. The therapist explained to Zara how my consistency with the home exercises between sessions had made all the difference in Lily's development. She pulled out her folder and showed Zara documentation of every single appointment I'd never missed, and how I always came prepared with questions and observations about Lily's progress. Zara took notes while watching Lily work through her exercises, and I could see her nodding when the therapist mentioned how most parents don't follow through with the daily work like I did. After the session ended, Zara stayed to review more paperwork and watch how Lily and I went through our regular afternoon routine of snack time and modified puzzles designed for her motor skills. She observed me helping Lily practice her grip strength with special utensils, and watched how I broke down each task into tiny steps Lily could manage. 4 weeks after that first awful 911 call, Zara finally called while Lily was taking her afternoon nap. She told me she'd completed all her interviews and reviewed all the documentation from Lily's doctors and therapists. She said the case was closed as completely unfounded, and added that it was clear I was doing everything humanly possible for Lily, despite really challenging circumstances. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped the phone, and after I hung up I just sat on the kitchen floor and cried. Lily woke up from her nap and found me there with tears running down my face, and she climbed into my lap patting my cheeks. "Mama happy?" she asked in her slow, careful way, and that made me cry even harder. But they were good tears this time. I hugged her tight and told her yes, Mama was very happy while she kept patting my face with her little hands. Over the next few weeks, I started going back to the regular playground again, though I made sure to avoid the busy times when I knew those moms would be there. Some of the other mothers I'd see would ignore me completely and walk to the other side of the playground. Others would give me these quick little nods like they knew who I was but didn't want to get involved. A few actually smiled at me, and one mom even came over to push her daughter on the swing next to us. About 6 weeks after everything happened, a mom I'd never seen before walked up to me while I was helping Lily in the sandbox. She said she'd heard about what happened from other parents and wanted me to know she thought it was awful how those women had treated us. She told me she was a single mom too, and her ex had left when their son was diagnosed with autism. She pulled out her phone and asked if we could exchange numbers for playdates, since our kids might play well together. I typed my number into her phone and she texted me right away so I'd have hers too. 2 months after the incident, I got a text from Delaney inviting us to Aiden's 4th birthday party at one of those indoor play places. I stared at the invitation for a long time before texting back that we couldn't make it, but hoped he had a great day. We weren't enemies anymore, but we definitely weren't friends either, and I was okay with keeping it that way. 3 months after that day at the playground, I was sitting in the waiting room at Lily's speech therapy when I heard her voice clearly through the door. "Want more bubbles?" she said, and I jumped up so fast I knocked over my coffee. The therapist opened the door with this huge smile on her face and called me in to hear Lily say it again. It was just 3 words, but it was her first real sentence, and we'd been working on it for months. The therapist had tears in her eyes too, because she knew what the doctors had said about Lily probably never talking at all. That night after Lily went to bed, I got online and filled out the application for community college using financial aid. I figured if I was going to keep fighting for everything Lily needed, I should probably try to get a job that paid more than minimum wage. The application took forever, because I had to dig out my high school transcripts and write an essay about my goals, but I hit submit before I could chicken out. The whole playground thing became neighborhood gossip for a while, with different versions of the story depending on who was telling it. Some people said I'd saved that boy's life, and others said I'd been investigated by CPS for child neglect. After a few months, though, people found new things to gossip about and stopped staring at us so much when we walked by. I still heard whispers sometimes when we went to the grocery store or the library, but I'd learned to keep walking and focus on Lily instead of what strangers thought about us. The weeks turned into months, and I found myself back at that same playground, though I made sure to go at different times than before. Delaney started showing up with Aiden around the same time I brought Lily, and we'd nod at each other, but that was it. She'd sit on her bench, and I'd sit on mine while our kids played in the sandbox, and neither of us said anything mean or anything nice either. Aiden would sometimes share his trucks with Lily, and she'd clap her hands and try to say thank you, which came out more like tank ooh, but he never made fun of her for it. I noticed Delaney watching sometimes when I helped Lily climb the stairs or caught her when she stumbled, but she kept her mouth shut, and I was fine with that. 4 months passed like this, just existing in the same space without talking, until one day Aiden walked right up to Lily and took her hand to help her up the slide steps. Delaney looked at me, and I looked at her, and we both just shrugged, letting our kids figure it out themselves. The daycare job came through 6 months after everything went down, and the director mentioned during my interview that she'd heard about the playground incident from another parent. She said anyone who could stay calm enough to save a kid during all that drama was exactly who she wanted watching the other children. The pay wasn't great, but they let me bring Lily for free, which saved me $300 a month in childcare costs I could put toward her therapies instead. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I'd work the morning shift while Lily played with the other kids. And even though she couldn't keep up with everything they did, the structured environment helped her practice her social skills. Her speech therapist started noticing improvements too, saying that being around other kids all day was pushing Lily to try harder with her words. She went from 2-word phrases to 3-word sentences over those months, and the therapist recorded every session to show the insurance company she was making progress worth paying for. I'd connected with 3 other moms whose kids had different delays and disabilities, and we'd created this informal network where we'd watch each other's kids during doctor appointments. One mom had a son with cerebral palsy, another had twin girls with autism, and the third had a daughter with Down syndrome. We'd meet at the accessible playground across town once a week and let our kids play while we shared information about which doctors took Medicaid and which therapies actually helped. Nobody judged anybody else because we all knew what it felt like to have people stare at our kids. The mom who'd grabbed my arm that day at the playground had packed up and moved to another neighborhood according to the gossip I heard at the grocery store. The other women from that morning would see me around town and quickly turn down different aisles or suddenly remember they needed to leave. One time I ran into the mom who'd been recording everything on her phone, and she practically ran out of the store, leaving her half-full cart behind. It suited me fine not having to deal with any of them. By spring, Aiden and Lily had developed their own little routine at the playground where they'd play side by side in the sandbox, him building towers and her knocking them down while they both laughed. He never got mad when she couldn't follow the rules of games or when she needed extra time to climb up somewhere. Delaney and I still didn't really talk, but I noticed she'd started bringing extra snacks and leaving them on the bench between us where Lily could reach them. I signed up for online community college classes that started in the fall, just 2 to begin with since I had to work around Lily's therapy schedule and my job. The financial aid covered tuition and books, and I could do the coursework after Lily went to bed. My days went like this: get Lily up and ready, drop her at therapy or take her to work with me, pick her up, make dinner, help with her exercises, put her to bed, then study until midnight. Saturdays were for laundry and grocery shopping, Sundays for meal prep and the playground. It wasn't fancy, but we had a routine that worked, and nobody could take that away from us. I kept every receipt, every therapy note, every progress report in a binder just in case anyone ever questioned my parenting again. The binder got thicker each month, proof that we were surviving and even thriving in our own way. Then this morning, a full year after that awful day, I pushed Lily on the swing like always when she turned around and said clear as day, "Higher, Mama." Not higher or Mama up, but 2 real words that anyone could understand. I pushed her higher and she laughed that beautiful laugh, and I knew we were exactly where we needed to be. Thanks for hanging in there with me through all the questioning and wondering. Really enjoyed exploring these moments right alongside you all. Subscribe for more content like this.